Yeah.
I shared it on all my socials, so we'll see who joins in. It'll be up on YouTube later for people to listen to. I just want to thank you for joining me. My name
Yeah.
is
Thanks for
Andrew
having me.
Radziewicz. I am the psychic firefighter. Thepsychicfirefighter.com is my website. And I am joined today here with my good buddy, Jim Tierney. And you're in Brooklyn right now, Jim?
Actually, in Jersey now, but
Jersey.
yeah, I was in
Okay.
Brooklyn. Yeah.
Cool, cool. If you want
Yeah.
to give a little intro about yourself.
Yeah. I'd spent about the last 16 years in Brooklyn, and I'd say I spent about 3 or 4 years volunteering, trying to help animals, and then the last 3 years actually trapping the animals and doing the work itself. But I do trapping and tracking in New Jersey, Connecticut, up Westchester area, and I go into Brooklyn, I go into Queens and Bronx. I do all the city. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. So I'm pretty much going in and out. I still see the city. I'm just not living in the city. So.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
so growing up, did you grow up in Brooklyn or where are you from
No, the
initially?
Bronx. I grew up in the Bronx
Grew up
till
in
I
the
was 10.
Bronx. Bronx.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And at what age did you discover that you had some psychic abilities or an intuition? When did that happen for you?
That was like I had some panic attacks when I was a kid. My mother, recently told me that the place we moved into, because I can't, my mom was a single mother, and we went from a nice area in Westchester to a not so great area in the Bronx. It wasn't bad, but it was not as it wasn't 5-story walk up and all that. And the apartment we got was somebody died in the apartment 2 weeks before.
Wow.
So I really do attribute those panic attacks and a lot of the weird stuff I was feeling and getting. And that was at the age of 5 to 9, I would say. But it did
Wow.
stop. It did actually stop around 10. I didn't have any like mystical experiences at all.
Hmm. Right, right.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I have heard that with people about getting anxiety or panic attacks, or later on in life, I've heard of people saying that their body was either adjusting to the different frequencies that are here on
Yeah.
Earth,
Yeah.
which is causing fear, anxiety, panic. And I know myself too, being a young kid, if you're having those types of feelings, in 1980, I was born. So in the 80s, I had no clue what that stuff was. I just thought
Yeah.
everyone feels like that, right? It's a
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
thing from
Totally.
time to
Totally.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
years later, I had noticed that there was a similar feeling that I would get in my 20s with these panic attacks. But I realized it actually wasn't panic; it was energy. And I started to lay down on the ground and ground myself, and it just sort of worked itself out. But I don't get like that anymore. But there
wow.
is a weird. It's very similar to a panic attack. The energy in my chest and all that. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. And now, had anyone else in your family experience anything like this, or were you the first?
my mother.
Your
My mother
mom. Okay. Yep.
always saw, heard, felt, would tell us of people that died that in our family that would come in the dreams. Um, it was always a thing to the point where I was so used to hearing it, I never really thought that my mother had that ability. Just because
Right.
I just figured, oh, that happens to everybody. I don't know. So yeah, but
Right.
my mother
Right.
very psychic. Yeah.
Right. And anything before mom? Any grandparents? You ever heard any stories about ancestors? Anything else like that?
No, the only I don't know if it runs on my mother's side. I don't really know of anyone like my grandmother. My grandmother from my father's side. The only thing that I thought was pretty cool about that is that one time as a little kid, I told her I was afraid of dying because I may have seen something on TV, and her response was, there's no need to be afraid. And then she told me about her near death experience, and she had this really cool near death experience, and that was like in 1982, 1883. I was kind of like, I don't know. I was comforted by it, but at the same time, it was good to hear somebody say, "Listen, I have had an experience, and it wasn't scary." That was the first time I ever heard that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think it for me too. It was important to find other people that had experienced these things, and it kind of opens the door a little bit. Like I'm not the only one. Oh, and it's family. Wow. Okay, that's good because maybe there's something in my genetic line, or at least I could open up and talk to her about that. My grandmother was like that. My mom too, but mostly my grandmother was able to talk to her about all those things or weird things or things that I was experiencing. And so you said you grew up in the Bronx, and then what year did you come to Brooklyn?
No, so yeah, I was in the Bronx until I was 10. I
Yep,
lived up in New Jersey, Northwest New Jersey, till I was about 21. Came
yep.
back to Manhattan around 21 to be an actor, do the arts and the writing and stuff. And then I moved to Brooklyn in 2006,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
on a
Okay.
whim, on a total whim. And then we were right on the border of Prospect Heights and Park Slope. It was awesome. And from there, I stayed 16 years.
Wow. And what year did you start with doing the pet finding? And did that start first with humans, or how did you transition into
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it started with humans only because when I discovered that this was something, I started to get like really weird things that were happening. Just strange stories. There's a story called I talk about it, Sweet Pickles. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. It
No,
was a
no.
woman who liked me in grammar school and high
Okay.
school. She had something wrong with her. She had some challenges, you know. Her whole family did, and she contacted me. It was right after I wrote a screenplay based on the friendship of someone that I had lost 20 years prior. And this woman said, I need to call you. And she started doing a reading and telling me about this girl who she had no idea what her name was. She just happened to live in the same house that the girl lived in when I was a kid. So this
Wow.
whole weird thing opened up, and I was like, "What the hell?" And you said, we were talking earlier, and you said you turned white or someone turned white when you said something to them. Dude, that was exactly when she said that to me. I was like, I just felt like I just entered another dimension. I didn't understand what that was, and then from there, I started having weird things happen to me, and I opened that whole realm back up, and yeah, that's when somebody said to me one day. He was a friend. He said, "My friend in Vermont, my old roommate, um, went missing. And what do you think?" I was at a coffee shop, and
Mm,
I said, "I'll draw something. I don't really know. I'll just give it a shot." And I did a drawing. Then he gave it to the family, and the family never received it, or the family gave it to the cops. They never did anything with it. And then I think 3 or 4 months later, they were at a bar and they were talking about this drawing that I did, and they decided to go give it to the cops or do it themselves. And within 2 days, they found the woman about a tenth of a mile from where I said on the map. Now I hadn't even been to Vermont, but I did draw. I knew exactly how she died, what she looked like, because I could see all the spirit stuff, and I was just going with what she was showing me. I was
mhm.
following the water line to see like the river, to see like how it bend. Then I would find the bend in the map, and that's kind of how I found the spot itself. So that was one, and then I did one in Jersey, and it was the same thing. It was very strange, 1/10 of a mile kind of thing, where the body was, and that's exhausting. I found that to be pretty exhausting. So I wanted to
Yeah.
try pet because I really, I'm a big animal lover.
Sure, sure. And do you remember the first pet case or dog case you did?
Yeah, I mean, I worked on Uh, there was a dog case that I was working on, and I had a dream about the dog showing up in a courtyard, and I drew it, and then I showed it to somebody. But then the next day, the dog was spotted at this place, and it was in a courtyard. And I always would compare the drawings to what I drew,
Yeah.
whether it's remote viewing or not. But yeah, that was one of the first ones. There was another one. There was a dog that was running on the BQE. Um, no, is that no, Bronx Queens Expressway, yeah. So, running on BQE, came off the exit, and I was basically saying, "I see this dog heading towards this park on this street, and I waited in this location for 3 days for this dog." And the dog never showed, but the 4th day in the morning, the dog came through that, and that's how they got the dog, at that location. So, I knew something was going on, but I didn't it's not something you can just it's not a GPS system. But I can definitely get impressions of what's going to happen, what did happen. I get something, and I try and make sense of it from that.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so, I know sometimes people might approach you, whether you're out or you're doing something, but normally do you sit and meditate, or do you have a certain process that you do this? How does it work for you?
No, I it's always I went with a medium coach who then really took interest in me to, doing this, and he started to like bring people to me and all that. But he always said to me, "You don't your problem is that you don't know when to shut down." My whole life, I've always been dialing in at people's energy. I could go to a coffee shop and I'll be online and I'll start looking. If I look at somebody, I'll see things, but I always took that as normal. And then somebody told me, no, that's called blending, and you need to learn to turn that off because it gets very draining. But I kind of don't really do any ritual. I just dial in and that's it. It just I'll start getting stuff that's already there. If I see a picture of a person or an animal, I always ask myself, what's already there? Like what's already beat you to it?
Yeah.
And that happened with someone who wanted to do a reading of his good friend. And I said, "Man, I don't want to know anything about your friend. I just give me his first name." And he said, "But why don't you want to know anything?" And I said, "Because say for instance, like I see a guy playing golf that and then he said my friend was a pro golfer. And I saw from his friend already sitting across from him, I already had, but I thought it was an imaginative thing, and so I said it. That's how it works, man. It's there already.
That's interesting because people will book in with me or they'll reach out and say, "Hey, could you read me next week or whatever?" And as soon as the communication will start, I will start getting information. Like same thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like on my computer and boom, I'm like, I'm already getting things for next week just as soon as it
Yeah.
happens. And I didn't say,
Nuts.
"Oh, let me start receiving this." Sometimes it just comes through, or I notice when I get up in the morning, right when I get up, initially right in the morning and I'm fresh, boom, I'll get a download or whatever you want to call it. And
Yeah.
then during the day, either someone that I had planned to sit with and read, or someone comes out of nowhere, messages me, "Hey, can you read me?" And I just had a dream in the morning or something out of the dream and go, "Hey, does this make sense to you?" For example,
Yeah.
I saw a lady, Linda, who's a nurse. What does that mean? And someone said, "Oh, that's my mother." I said, "Wow, I saw that right when I woke up this morning. Linda and nurse." I was seeing a picture of my Aunt Linda, who's a nurse. A lot of times they'll show me people that I know, images that I know, and then
Yeah.
I play the game of
That's how
charades.
I picked up on that because I started to see somebody in my grandmother's apartment. I'm like, why are you in my grandma's apartment? And then I realized, did you go to your grandma's apartment? And they're like, yeah. So I think that is how they do it. They show an ant if they think of an ant, you know. So I thought that is pretty cool. It's pretty cool they do that.
Yeah, I don't, for me, I don't get a crystal clear message of, "Oh, so and so is saying this." It's not like that. I don't get a dialogue coming
Yeah.
right out. It's like bits and hits. And yeah, I can meditate and do it. And then just like you, I can just kind of organically just whoom, no woo, no grabbing crystals or tarot cards. You don't need any of that stuff. That's fine if
Mhm.
that works for you and people want to do that. But
Yep.
ultimately, just like me, you're the best portal out there, man. Just being that raw,
And
organic,
that's yeah.
who you are. I think that everyone out there, I think people out there have this ability. It just like anything, it's not for everyone. Some people could care less. Some people
Mhm.
don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
Did you notice that when you started
Yeah.
to get into
I was
this? Did you notice that people,
uh,
how was the reception on your end from people that you knew when you started to get into this stuff?
Uh, things were weird. I mean, I people would say, I think my mother was very Catholic. She said, this isn't good that you do this, and then I did a reading for her, I think, and then that was it. And she said, you got to do that. And a lot of people want me to do readings and stuff. What do you see anything for me? Or for some reason, with people, like you were talking about how you don't really have a dialogue with them. With me, if I can dial into somebody and I can literally see where they are, I can ask them a question and then I draw, but it's just to keep my mind busy while more
Yeah.
stuff comes through.
Hmm.
And then from there, I'll start saying shit. And half the time, I don't even know what I'm about to say the moment I'm saying it. And I'm like, that's when it gets nutty. But that's just one process. I just didn't find it that fascinating, to be completely honest. Like
Right.
somebody would say, like, that must be so cool to do. And I'm like, I guess for me, it's never felt like anything special. So it kind of can be boring at times, to be honest, which is why the dog thing and the cat thing, that's very difficult because now you got to use that to find out how that can affect the relative reality. And to
Mm,
me, that's where I get challenged. But
right.
when I do deceive people, it's like, it's all right. It's
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. With pets, it's very interesting and it's very specific. And the names of a human are regular names. With pets, you have all sorts of interesting names that aren't common. And when you nail that, or you say the name
Mhm.
right, or you're sensing that name, that's very specific. I had a dog.
Yeah.
My dog's name was Odie, Odi. And after he died, I went to a medium the next day, and he had said to me, "Someone's coming through. They have cancer in their stomach." And my dog just had that the day before I put him down. And I'm listening to this guy, and
Hmm.
I'm thinking of my this is my dog. Can it be? It's a dog though. And he says to me, they have a non-traditional name. It's with an O. It's a O. And I'm like, Odie? And he's like, yeah. And I didn't tell anyone my dog died. No one knew yet. I was just grieving,
Yeah.
but I didn't say anything, and I had the wall up. I was just I didn't want anyone to know. And I'm like, wow, man. And he started describing things that I did with the dog in his last days. And I'm like, all right, there's no way the guy could have known this and what I went through and
Yeah.
what doctor I took him to and where it was located and just weird, odd things. And you said when you're drawing things, so when you're drawing things, are you drawing out locations of where pets might be when they go missing or where they might end up? What do you actually
Yes.
draw out?
So instantly, I'll see locations. I always dial into landmarks, and I'll get a feeling. It's very strange. I guess they call it clairsentience, where you start to, everything comes in packages. You'll start to know something, and I feel like I'm walking on some type of wood, and then you realize a railroad tie or something along that. It just, there's a feeling that you get, and then the images as well. The images, um, they come in the strongest, and the very first. I'll get images of, I see your dog in someone's yard. I see it on a farm. I see it here, and then from there, I'll put about three or four things in, and I say to people, and this is before they even tell me where the dog went missing from. You know what I'm saying? And then they'll tell me their location, and then I'll help them on the map find locations that I think match this. Half the time, I don't even got to do that because they already know where it is. They
Right,
already know where those locations are,
right,
which I find just mind blowing.
right. And let me ask you this. So you're doing that, and for the average person out there, person that has a dog and the dog goes missing, what can someone do, like me or anyone, say my dog ran off? What would you recommend for the regular person to do to try to tap in, possibly to find them quickly? Say they don't have time to contact you or anyone, and oh my God, they're scrambling. What do you
Yeah.
recommend?
Well, it depends on the human animal bond, how strong the bond is.
Yep.
If the bond is really strong, I always tell people you're the closest to this animal, not than all of us. So if you're getting a gut feeling, if you're getting if you're dreaming, if at night you feel something, I always ask them to say it to me because the way I look at it like this is, even if I get a vision, I don't take that vision and I don't go out and say we're going to put all our cards in this vision. What I do is I say we're going to treat this as one possibility, but it does have to prove itself just like all the other ones have to.
Right.
So if I get a sighting of a dog, I don't know if that's the actual dog. We have to find out if that's like, are the people seeing somebody else's dog? So I would say focus on your intuition, depending on how strong the bond is.
Right.
If it's not very strong, there are certain things that dogs do that you can, like they pretty much always return to the point of escape within 24 to 48 hours,
Mm,
and they'll do that even if they don't know where they are. They'll come to the most familiar spot. So someone might say, "Oh, but they're not from here. He doesn't know anything about my house, but he will come back."
right.
It's
Right.
crazy. You know how to do it. So there are certain things you can do.
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old Siberian Husky, and a couple years ago, right when we got her, she ran off, and it was on a main road, and she's running in and out of the street, almost getting hit by cars, and it reached a point she was gone in one direction, and I just said, "She'll go home. I don't know how, but she'll get." I just felt that, so I said, instead of me
Mhm.
getting in the car, driving up and down every block, I didn't do that. I just went home. By the time I got home, my kids called me and said, "She's back." We don't even know how.
Yeah,
Like literally, she just got
yeah,
back there. It was unbelievable. We were so fortunate.
yeah. There's some dogs that I've worked cases where they'll start heading home to their previous location from where they just
Yeah,
moved miles
that's
away.
it's in,
They're really unbelievable.
that's interesting. So even she was in the other direction, so a direction I don't normally walk her. It was the other way she ran, but yet she made it back to home base where we live. I don't know how. She must have went through yards because I was on that main road. She did not come back that way. I don't know if she ran down to the beach. So what do they follow their scent back to the house? Like how do they
Yeah, I
figure it
mean, there's
out?
a bunch of things. Yeah, they do. It's scent. They have a very strong scent. I mean, I think one of the analogies is like their nose is so strong that if we were to compare their nose to our sight, if you can
Wow.
kind of wrap your head around there, what we see from 3/4 of a mile away would be what they could see from 3,000 miles away. So they have so much of a heightened sense of smell.
Yeah.
They have that. They also are intelligent. And they know how to. They know what to look for, and it's amazing. It really is amazing. There was one case in Brooklyn where the woman's like, a friend of mine sent me this this case of a dog, and my first response was, the dog's gonna go home. And I think 7 hours later, the dog went home,
Wow.
and it was like, but I saw the dog running home. That's why I said that,
Yeah.
because not every dog is gonna do that in Brooklyn, but yeah.
And let me ask you this. So if a dog takes off, why would they stay out? Why wouldn't they come home? Why would they stay out in the wilderness?
Yeah, because so the average person, when they hear of a dog going missing, they think it's a dog that's like a lab that goes across the street to your neighbor's house, and it's like, oh, these are not the types of dogs that I work with. I work with xenophobic dogs. These are dogs that are they're not really good with new environments. They could be from a rescue. They could have been abused. They go into a feral state the moment they leave the owner. So even if they're someone owned a dog for 2 years, if they go into the feral state, say for instance, because a firework goes off, that dog doesn't recognize the owner after that. It goes into a feral state. It
Uh,
just literally goes into primal. And those are the dogs I basically try and help people with, because those dogs you can't go near. You couldn't go near. There was a dog I did in Jersey, and the dog was running across the New Jersey Turnpike back and forth. And the state troopers were like, listen, this dog's going to either get killed or he's going to cause a major car accident. And I was like, damn, it went in like 70 something locations in 2 weeks. It was so stressful. Do you know what I'm
wow.
saying? Couldn't even look at the dog. And I had gotten a break. I saw that the dog was following the water, and I said that dog has to be going through the water through the backyards. I put a camera there, but when I went back there to put some food down, there was food that I had from the night before, and I saw the dog running away from me with the food. And the moment I saw her take that food, I said, "I she'll be back. She'll be back to that spot for more food." So I put a trap the next day. The dog went in the crate, whatever trap got caught, and that's it. It was the end of the story. But yeah, we're talking about very highly sensitive, terrified dogs that even their owners can't go near them. They can't go near them.
Right.
If you go even try and grab them, they'll run into traffic. You'll get them killed. So
Wow.
that's why it gets really stressful.
And then
That's the dog in the movie that you saw.
yeah.
That's exactly what we were dealing with. That dog was actually missing for 28 days. It wasn't 3 attempts.
Wow.
I had to go through that for about 3 weeks of the four. But it goes to show you, we did get the dog in 3 days. They showed the consecutive. It did go like that, but it went like that after like a 2 weeks of putting cameras out and getting close and then not getting. So that's what you're
Wow.
dealing with.
And so, yes, so just to touch on that. So, for people that might be listening for the first time or just hearing you, you were just recently featured in a documentary. You just want to talk about that a little bit, how you got involved in the
Yeah,
neighborhood?
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a cool documentary called Shadow of a Dog. These guys follow me around. Um, this is a cat, cat on my chest.
Yeah.
Um, the guys followed me around for, I think they got 32 hours of footage, and they made a 10-minute film, which I laugh about because I'm like, we could have had a feature at that.
Yeah.
But we, they got wind of what I was doing through an article, local article, and then they said, they said, let me meet you at a coffee shop, and then we'll just talk about what you do. And the next thing you know, I said I'd let these guys come with me to all these cases, and then we got the Chica case. And so this particular 10-minute film follows this one dog case. And like I said, they edited the thing where it looks like it's quickly 3 days. But once again, I was crawling under that thing way more than that, all hours of the night.
Wow.
And it was really brutal, that one,
Wow.
but certainly not the longest. But that's the film. You could see it on the website, or you could see it on YouTube. Shadow of a Dog.
Right, right. And that's on what website would that be on? Their website, the film website?
Well, right now it's being featured on the New Yorker. If you go to YouTube channel on the New Yorker,
Okay.
go to
Yep.
the New Yorker on YouTube, and you'll see the film. They're featuring it as something that they produced. Basically, it says the New Yorker presents now,
Oh, gotcha.
which is
Yeah, we'll put the link down below and everything for everyone. And so that's just one case that you were on, right? And at the end, you were going to another one down by the harbor or the pier or something,
oh
right?
yeah, yeah, that dog, yeah, that was another case in Red Hook. That dog had a crazy ending. It was a happy ending. That dog ran through 2 tunnels. It went through the Holland Tunnel. It ended up in Jersey. So it went through the Battery Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel. This cat is biting me. That's why I'm trying to get him out. Um, yeah, I go from the case to case. So this is what the book I'm writing is about. Is essentially what is it? It's not just tracking dogs. It's like the relationships I built with people where we didn't find their dogs, or maybe their
Yeah.
dogs died. You know, and that's kind of like the journey that I take the reader through, because that's really what's the most valuable, I think, is how I connected with people and how the animals brought, how they related to their animals. You know, how did they change after they had this experience with their animal? It's just pretty cool to see, and I think
Yeah.
that's what the documentary did a good job of capturing. Um, even because Chica was a stray dog, but in the end, when the documentary guy, we were there, and they saw that the dog was trapped. Everyone was like, "What?" It was like we found Elvis or something. We
Yeah.
just couldn't believe it. So it's very rewarding.
So yeah, 28 days. I mean, that's a long time, and to be out there, and you're in the Brooklyn Cemetery, right?
Yeah, I was in Greenwood Cemetery, and
Yeah.
we were already told we weren't allowed in there, so we had to
Yeah.
sneak in every night. And then, but there's a case I did that was 52 days, and there's cases that are way past that. There's people that have gotten dogs after 8 months. You know, they get really crazy. They
Wow.
can go really far.
What's
So
the longest case you've been on?
is the 52-day one in Brooklyn,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that actually had a lot to do with my um, the intuition came in play with that, because in that particular case, the dog was in an area and then it ran out. It was a food plant in Brooklyn, and it was on the run. We hadn't even gotten a sighting in a month. So when we got this sighting, it was really, it was really great. But then somehow the employees of the plant chased the dog out,
Uh,
and they screwed the whole thing up for us. So I wound up going to put my trail cameras around the area, and it was 5 in the morning, and I just was bored. So I started to erase footage from an old camera, and I saw something. If I showed it to you, you wouldn't see anything. But I kept saying there's something behind there, and then I lightened it up, and I saw a dog's face. Now nobody saw this dog's face,
wow.
and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! It's right there." Nope. They're like, "No, no, no, we don't see it." So my guess was that because the guy who owned the plant, he was Jewish, and he shut it down for the weekend. So my was like, okay, so she's still in there, or he is still in there because his name was Guy. He's in there with no food and water for 3 days now, and that was what I was worried about. So we went in there the next day and we got him, and he was
Wow.
in there. But if I'll show you the picture. It's ridiculous because it
Yeah.
doesn't even to me. I'm like, I don't even know what it was that made me want to actually take a look at this. But
Right.
I went with my intuition, and I made me realize that sometimes I think there's some things I'm able to see that people can't.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 It's like that extra sense, that extra sense that puts everything together, and boom, you can't describe it. People can't see it. You're seeing it though, crystal clear. It's there. Yeah, it's. I think there's some sort of connection with you and with whatever you're trying to communicate with, whether that's that animal or that person. They're yearning to get found, to be fed, and you're looking for them, and somehow the energy aligns, and boom, you get that little glimpse, whether you psychically see them or you take a picture and you're like, they're right there, but people are like, what are you talking about? I've had the same thing
You know,
happen
there was
where I'm
there
seeing
was a
something.
dog that didn't make it. There was a dog that didn't make it in this one case,
Hmm.
and I took a picture of the environment. Why, I don't know. I did it one night. I just took 4 pictures. The next day, I saw the picture and I saw the dog's face, clear as day. Not only was there no fog, there was no fog. All the other pictures, no fog. I took a picture. It's a white, milky thing with the dog's face right in the center. Everyone's like, no, 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 no. All I did is I sent it to the owner, and his response was, "That's my dog."
Wow.
He didn't even know about psychic abilities. He said, "That's my dog." And I
Wow.
realized, man, some people can see it and some people can't, and that's just that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think individually, like someone saying, oh, that's my dog. yes, you got to trust that feeling, whatever that thing is, that internal thing of, where your dog, or even if it's a human, where they might be. Continue to go with that, right? Like they're all variables, these are all possibilities. But when you're seeing that and you get that feeling inside, you'll know when it's different than it's just a random thought, right? Oh, thinking about them, or I want, I have that wishful thinking, I hope they're okay, I hope they're there. But when you have that confirmation and like you're certain, no, I know that's 100% it, and you get it validated, you show the owner, boom, man, that's special. That's that extra thing, man. There's that sixth thing, or I don't even think you could put a word on that thing. That's just something there that we have as
It's a
humans.
knowing.
Yes,
It's
the
a
knowing.
knowing.
Excellent. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. That
Yeah.
knowing, and it's important too, man. I think that animals have that. I think animals have that sense too with their owners, or even people that have this ability that you're tapping into this. You're tapping into that knowing. I feel that the animals know that too,
Hmm.
and there's that connection when they're found, or you finally see them, you finally feed them, boom. Do you get that? Do you get that sense of relief, that comfort after, once you find them, that boom, you get that womb, that total connection with them?
When I physically find them,
Yeah.
like when they're okay and I catch
Yeah.
them and all that, yeah,
Hmm.
I do. I get like for the but you can go through some really strange emotions. So, for instance, in the one that was running across the turnpike, when I caught her, I felt guilty, and the reason why was because she started to trust me, and I tricked her by trapping her. In other words, I took her out of the environment that she felt most comfortable in, and you'll get like these weird things. Sometimes you're really happy, you're happy the dog's okay, but then there's other times when you're like, man, I remember when I was out here for like 10 hours, like looking for this dog or putting the cameras out. There's something about the hunt that I think draws me to the work. The idea that I'm trying to connect with the animal, and somehow I almost have to see through the animal's eyes to try and find out what it's going to do next. Maybe it's a game. I don't know. Yes, it feels great when they're home safe. You never want anything bad to happen to them.
Sure.
Um, but the case itself can be, it's like a, I think it's just like a sport or something. It's a game or something that I'm playing. And I think that there's a guy who does this. He calls himself an intuitive tracker, and he's the only other guy that I heard use that phrase. But he uses it as, he says he'll go into the woods and he'll see something like a log, and he'll start to dial into what happened,
Mm.
almost like the Akashic records,
Yep.
and you sort of like, you kind of dial into what happened in that very spot, and you try and make sense of it. So he kind of dials into the environment. I think that's kind of like what I do with the dogs. I try to dial into what I think they're doing. Now, I never tell. A lot of times when I'm hired to physically do this work, there is no one's talking to me about these cats are out of their mind.
All right.
Nobody's literally hiring me to do anything intuitive.
Yep.
Most of the time, not. So they're actually having me go out, but I'm using it and I'm doing my own version of it. And maybe I won't say it, but it doesn't matter. I'm doing it because I know that, okay, I'll put a camera over there because I did see something over there, or I feel drawn to that one spot.
Right.
And then, so it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. This is, like you said, that journey, that game. It's like a treasure hunt, right? Like you're doing
Yeah.
something in life, and there's that treasure hunt, and you're looking at it from that other perspective, their perspective. Yeah, anyone can go to work, get money, get paid, whatever. But
Mhm.
I notice it's a lot more fun when you're going on that journey, and it's ups and downs, and the peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't go the way you expect. The outcome isn't the way you expect, but you keep going. You keep going, and you just keep doing the work. You learn from it, right? And you just always
Yeah.
try to do the best you can. Someone told me once, if you're reading, with your heart, you're in the right place. You read with your heart, man. Just try to center yourself. And I always, keep that in mind, man. Instead of my head getting so, caught up in, I got to do this, I got to get the end result. When I ground myself and just be organic, right? No woo woo, just be in that moment and
Mhm.
just read like you're seeing, do what you do, whatever it's called, do it, and boom, it'll just flow. It'll just flow naturally. And it feels right. You're in that.
It also.
you're in that state, you're in that flow state.
Yeah, and what I found with psychic, even if I'm reading for somebody, if it was for someone who wants to connect with somebody from the other side, I always find that when it's the thing I never want to say,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I have a name for that, which is ridiculous. It's kind of like a little boy inside that won't say what he's supposed to say, and it's almost because you're afraid. It's so random, dude. Why am I randomly seeing this? And those are always the ones that are the strongest hits because it's not coming from me, and I'm losing control of the information. So I get a little bit like, that's crazy. Why would I? Why would that ever be the case? And then bam, then you find out that it's because of this.
Right.
And yep,
Yeah, that's really important. I get that a lot, man. Something will come up and it seems so bizarre. I remember seeing like a monkey on the wall, and I'm like, just doesn't make any sense. But I said to the person, I'm seeing this monkey on the wall, and they had, monkey wallpaper in their child's room. Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
real
exactly.
specific. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was also like, I'll get fine detail with that. Like, scratching, and they said, oh, my child used to scratch on the wall next to it, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I don't feel like, oh my god, why am I bringing this up? It's going to sound bizarre. And I'll get at times too, I'll say something that hasn't happened yet, or the person isn't aware of it at that moment, but yet they leave, they go home, they ask someone, and a relative says, oh yeah, your uncle had, a pet monkey or had monkey wallpaper. So you never know with that little detail or that bizarre detail that you think, right? And the ego is telling us
Yeah.
this is crazy. Don't say it. You're going to sound like an idiot. You say it, they don't know. But yet, I've had a lot of people over the years come back.
Oh yeah.
They'll text me or call me and go, oh my God, I talked to my relative after I left you. Thank God you said that because now it makes sense. So,
That
yeah.
happened to me that happened to me with a woman in a park. I was in Prospect Park, and I was telling her what I did, and she said, "Well, what do you get with me?" And I was walking the dogs home. Man, I didn't even get to my apartment. I was walking the dog back, and I could see all this stuff. It was all there. So I wrote it to her, and I never heard back from this lady. 3 years later, she contacts me. "You
Wow.
said this stuff, and it didn't happen yet, and now it's happened. Can we get on a call?" I mean, that's crazy.
Wow.
I don't know how, you know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, cool. So
Wow.
sometimes, yeah, you're like the messenger. It's just you got to go with it, and I think, yeah, I think a lot of times I'll get in the way of the work. Sometimes I'll almost be like, oh, I want to make sure I'm helping people. That's another thing. I want to actually make sure that I'm when I'm doing this work that I'm making a difference.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes when I do readings and I just get people upset because a lot of times people cry. I feel like I feel like I'm not making their life any better. And somehow that kind of makes me shy away from it a little bit. Whereas at least with the animals, it's more of a concrete yes, no. It's did I help you? Yes, I did it or I didn't. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too, the expectation. I will tell people, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear, right? I'm here to tell you maybe what you
Mhm.
need to hear or what your relatives are saying, you need to hear this first. I can't just
Yeah,
I'm not going to cherry pick it. I'm not going to go around that and just tell you, but everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. No, some people die and they're not in a good space and they're
yeah,
expressing that so it's definitely them, right? It's definitely the person. They're describing how they passed. They're still not well. They're still struggling, but they're being honest about it, right? So, because some souls don't come through, not everyone comes through. So sometimes I'm like, no, I'm not getting anything. Whereas some people will go to a medium. They'll tell them, no, they're here, everything's fine, they're in heaven, blah blah blah. You want that? You can
yeah,
go. You can go to somebody and pay for
yeah,
that. That's not me. I'm just
exactly.
going to tell you the truth, man, and it just is what it is. And then at least most people are very good and grateful about it. Most. But you always, like you said, you get some people, you're like, wow, did I upset them? Would I put them in that space? So I always like
Yeah,
to close with people and say, make sure you follow up. You follow up with someone and don't just leave this. If you're not well after a reading,
exactly.
either follow up with a mental health professional or come back to me or somebody because maybe you need to go a little bit deeper. Maybe there's more to this. There's layers. It's not just cut and dry. It's not always just
With
straightforward.
exactly, and with mediumship, what I've noticed is people will. you'll do a reading, and then people will be like, they'll keep emailing me more questions, and or they'll want to know more and more and more. They'll want another reading, and I was like, what the hell is that? That clinginess. And then I went get back to that woman who gave me the reading where all the blood drained from my face. Man, I was calling that woman every day of the week, and I was like, because you somehow see that person as having some sort of a power that you don't. And it's kind of funny because in a lot of ways I know a lot of people, they don't know how to use it, or maybe sometimes these people can't open that channel. But to me it's a normal thing. It's not even like a thing. It's like it's just always there, and I can always, like, my dad passed away. He passed away 2 years ago, but I can see my dad whenever I want, man. I dial in and I ask him questions, and I can see exactly where he's at.
Right.
And sometimes I'm surprised and sometimes I'm not, but all to say, I can dial in and get to the place where I feel that he is not gone. He's
Right.
not in front of me, but he's not gone. So that's what I think people really, really, really want when they
Yeah.
see him.
Yeah, I mean, right? People want to know there's something else. And I knew for me, same thing. When I had definitive proof and a therapist didn't do it, the priest didn't do it, people in the firehouse, they just couldn't do it for me. But when I finally got that reading from that medium, and then I had to process that, and then I waited a year, right? Because I just said, I had to recover from that. Like, it was like, what? Did that really just happen? And then I came back, and then I had that seed planted, like, okay, there's more to this than just you getting the reading. Someone gave me that confidence that you can do this, right? You
Mhm,
specifically, not, yeah, anyone can do it. But when you have the calling, right, and that internal calling, then you meet that
mhm,
person that's validating that. And you're like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Then you get into it and do that, and it starts to blossom, and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I'm so glad that I went this route, because if I didn't, I'd be home and constantly searching in, whether it's,
yeah,
whatever route I went, but I'd be searching for the same thing. I want to
yeah,
know. I
yeah.
need to know.
It's funny because people, I think, I've been on the side when I was in my early 20s. I lost a friend, and I was distraught by it. And I never thought of once of seeing a medium or anything. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the way I was brought up with the church stuff, but it just never even crossed my mind. But I remember feeling like I wanted information, or I wanted proof through information, or I wanted visuals or something. But what's cool about all this is when you have this gift, you have that knowing. And it's how you even can describe this. I don't understand. It's like you can get to a place where uh, for instance, my ex-wife's grandmother was. We were very close to her. She was in her 90s and she died. My ex-wife was bawling her eyes out, and I noticed what was really strange was that anytime I thought of the grandmother, she was staring at me live, like we are right now. And I saw her in a setting, and she was just staring at me. That's cool. But what blew my mind was she was right there. Like I could feel that she was right. I just felt like she never went anywhere. And that thing is what people. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
The knowing, the knowing. Not because there's proof, there's validation, but those people will still go out and keep getting readings from lots of different mediums to keep trying to prove or disprove it. Once you have that knowing, it's gone. You don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, that's part of the journey, is going on and reaching out to different ones. And hopefully, I tell people, hopefully you don't have to go to 20 mediums. Hopefully this the first one gives it to you and you go, whoa,
Yeah.
this is the real thing. This person is
Yeah.
who they claim they are. Because man, you can get, you can go down some crazy rabbit holes with this stuff, and people tell you all sorts of nonsense, spend all sorts of money, all that BS.
Yeah.
No, this is not everyone is 100% psychic and going to do this and become a medium. No, of course not. Some people, some people will come get a reading, that's it, and they go about their lives. Me,
Yeah.
it just wasn't enough. And I noticed people around me, people I love, family, friends, a lot of people were like that. They just get one reading or whatever. But somebody dies eventually. They have that moment and they go, okay. And they reach out to me now, 20 years later, 10 years later. I need to know. Now I need to know, man. My mom's gone, or whatever it is. You sit, and the person that, for example, people I went to high school with, I haven't talked to them in 20 years. People hit me up now. Hey, man, oh my God, can I get a session, this and that? And they're like, I had no idea you did this. And And it's amazing how we don't talk for 20 years. I don't know anything that's gone on in their life. And boom, I'm describing events from the last 20 years and we're catching up. And I'm telling them things about, these moments that are getting filled in now. And they're like, I wouldn't have gone to anyone else. I don't know if I could have trusted someone else. I don't know if I would have believed anyone else, but I know you wouldn't lie to me. I know there's no reason, man. I know you. I grew up with you. No way. So, yeah, man, we got a very important job with what we're doing. And you're the voice for people that can't talk. These dogs aren't speaking. They're not
Yeah.
going on Facebook right now. They're not going on YouTube talking about this. So what you're doing, I think, is another level up, man. You're literally you're doing the work of the creator or whatever put us here, man. And that's so important.
I was gonna just say to the point of the high school thing. There was a guy who died years ago from my high school who kept bothering me. I reached out to a friend of his that I didn't even really know, and I said, "Listen, man, this is what I'm seeing. Here's the reading." She's like, "Oh my god." Then while I'm talking to her, her dad came through, and I'm talking to this woman through Facebook. We're going through this whole thing. Years later, that woman dies. Her best friend contacts me and says, "When so and so died, she told me you did a reading. Can you do a reading for me on her?" So I'm doing readings. So I have threads of people that I've read for that are now deceased that I'm giving them. It was just something out of a movie.
It,
You just get some really strange stuff in this.
it's that synchronicity. I've realized eventually now everything for me, everything in my life is a synchronicity. Some good, some bad, but it's one after the other. And it's this
Yeah,
treasure hunt that I'm on. And boom, I'm meeting this person, meeting that person who is connected to this person. You're reading them and it's everyone. It's all, we're all connected together. We're all looking for that little piece. And hey, man, if I'm doing my part and helping somebody, tie up the shoelace, right? You got to put both your shoes on. You're just assisting them lacing that shoe, right? They just need a little
yeah.
bit of assistance. That's all it is. I needed that 20 years ago, 13 years ago when I was in that space. And I never forget that. I never forget what it's like to be day one with this and not have a clue what's going on and being guided with this. It's so important to be around the right people. And anyone listening out there, I always recommend, you do what you want. You got free will here. But for me, I try to find people that have been around people that have experience, that have done this, okay? Because this is so important. This is serious stuff. It's like being a firefighter. I'm not going to go in the firehouse and find somebody that's been there for a week to show me everything. I need to find someone with 30 years. So if you have people that have experience, especially with the internet, you could find anyone. Take your time, do some research, find somebody out there that has a lot of experience. You could probably find a lot of things out there that don't cost anything to get started. You could read books, download them for free. I mean, there's so much today, man. When I started
Yeah,
this
yeah,
journey, Jim, I had to go in person. I had to buy books. I had to do this on my own. I had to meet people in
yeah.
person. Where today, oh my God, man, it's the gifts we have with connecting with social media and technology. Oh my God, dude, this is great.
I was going to ask you how that ever, because last time when I saw you on Coney Island when we were hanging out, I think you were still in the fire department,
Yeah.
were you?
Yep. Mhm.
Then the next thing I know, you're in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm like, what happened? That dude just took off.
So I got
I
asked to
guess
speak at.
that New York Post thing just
Yep.
blew up, right?
So I was in the post, and then I got asked to speak at a conference here in Australia, and I was getting ready to go there, and I got a message on Facebook from a girl, and she said, "Oh, a friend request." We started talking, and basically, to make a long story short, that's my wife now of 4 years. So I went,
4 years,
we
yeah.
met, and I was like, all right, let's make it work. Who cares about whatever? And people, we have this, at least me, I have in my mind, oh, I become a fireman, I have to work 20 years, I have to do blah, blah, blah. Why? Why? Because that's what I was told I had to do, right? That's what the Matrix
Yeah.
is telling me I had to do. Well, you know what? I'm going to do what I want. So I'm going to do what I want. I did. And then the fire department was great anyway. They said, oh, you could take a year, and if you want to stay or come back to America with her, do whatever you want. You have a year to decide. So I left, made it work. I got a job as a mortician. So I was embalming deceased people in a funeral
No
home.
way, bro. No way.
Yep, it became an
Dude,
embalmer.
that's
So
crazy town.
I came here. I'm sitting outside. I'm like, all right, I'm going to work. I'm going to do something. And I'm like, I look at my wife and I'm like, I want to work in a funeral home. That's exactly what I said. So I'm outside under the stars, under the moon. And I'm like, all right, I want to work in a funeral home. I'd love to do that. The next day I wake up, turn my phone on. I get an email from, whatever job website, and it's for a funeral director job down the block from where I live. What are the chances?
Wow.
Once again, everything is synchronicity if you have the eyes to see it, pay attention. So I go in and I'm working there, and I'm like, I want to prepare them though. Like I'm in the funeral home and I'm directing and arranging and running around, driving the hearse, preparing the bodies. Great, love it. But I'm like, I want to prepare them. I think I can do that. I've never done it, but I'm like, I could do that. I know it. Like I could feel it. Once again, I could feel it. And I started doing it. And the person that ended up training me to do the preparing was psychic. What are the chances?
Wow.
And I started training with another girl. Two girls trained me, right? It's mostly girls that do the preparing because they do the hair, nails, makeup. That's not usually guys, it's usually girls. I had two girls training me that both had psychic abilities. But mine, I've been doing this way longer psychic wise. So I got into the preparing side of it, which was amazing. Loved it. So I started embalming, preparing bodies, still do that. I do still do that to this day. It's great. It's an amazing
Dude,
job.
you're in the show 6 feet under. That's what you're doing.
The real
You're
one.
living the
And
show.
yes,
Jeez, man.
they do talk to us. They do communicate with us. Once again,
Mhm.
I don't go in and say, like, hey, tell me whatever. I don't do that. But I sit there, and if I want to receive, if I want to open up, I will. So, for example, we had someone come in, and the girls I was with are like, oh, you getting anything from this person? So, based on how some people pass, yes, their energy is not right. And that can cause malfunctions at work. For example, somebody
Mhm.
killed himself. And in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., the manager got a notification on his cell phone that somebody was in the premises. Now, no one's there. Nobody's there at 2 a.m. He goes on, he turns his cell phone on. He showed me this. You could see the electric door opening halfway and closing the refrigerated door to where all the bodies are. Before we left that night, someone came in. It was a suicide, and they weren't in a good space. And we were like, "Wow, man, something felt off. It didn't feel right, man." The person had like acid burns, or it was just real bad, and it felt awful. You could tell they were in pain, man. They were really in a lot of pain, and the door was opening halfway, closing. And he went and he checked with the electrical system, called the door company. The door company said, we don't even have an alert. We have no electrical problem with that. Nothing. Not even that it's doing that. That's impossible. It should detect that the door's opening halfway and closing and boom, boom. It didn't even pick that up. Yet the camera system picked it up. So it was doing that. And usually when those things open, they open all the way because if there's an emergency, so you can get out. So it opening halfway and then reclosing should not even happen. That's impossible. So but the next day, the person was transported out. The body was out and it stopped. So we were like, and over the years, bro, like I said, I've been doing this a couple of years, but I'm working with people that have 20, 30 years experience. Dude, I could do a reality series and write 10 novels based on the stories I've heard and what I've seen. I've seen shadow figures, literally shadow figures walking through walls. I've heard my name called. I've heard people running up and down the hallways. And I've gone to
Yep.
lunch after, and coworkers have said, like, oh, Andrew, did you hear, for example, little Timmy? I'm like, what? They go, yeah, there's a little kid that runs up and down on the carpet in the morning here when no one's here. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, there's a soul. We call him little Timmy or whatever. And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about because I don't want them to think I'm crazy, right? I don't want them to
Yeah, of
know.
course, of course.
Where, yeah, now the cat's out of the bag, bro. Everyone knows. But yeah, it's that being a firefighter, I thought that was the best job in the world. Preparing the dead, dude, doing that and working in a funeral home and then doing readings, it all, once again, it helped me to do this work, man. I don't know what it's like to be dead. I'm not dead, but I know pretty close what that process is like for the family. Okay, and
Yeah.
for the deceased. So yeah, man, it's not for
Dude,
everyone, but I love it.
that film, the dog film, while we were filming it, man, we were in a car outside the cemetery. And I swear to God, all of us were sitting there, and some lady, as if she's right behind me, said, "Hello, hello." And everyone stopped. And we were like, "Did you hear that?" And what was cool is I had my mic on. So we were like, "Go back and see if it comes through." And it did. You can
Whoa.
hear her. You can hear her. It's very faint. She says, "Hello, hello." but you can then hear the director be like, "Did anyone else hear that?" We all heard it, bro. It was
Wow.
crazy. So it was pretty, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm glad you talked about that because people ask me that, "Oh, does anything happen?" And like I have heard this, I've seen it with people. People I worked at told me stories. One of the funeral homes was built on an old farmland, and people would see a guy walking through the funeral home dressed as an old farmer, same thing, walking through the wall and calling out people's names. People would come in the morning,
yep.
"Good morning, Tara. Good morning." You know, like they're like, "Nobody's there, bro. Nobody's there."
Oh,
Now,
yeah,
you're not going to hear these stories publicly, but you will now from me. It's great. It's
yeah,
great,
yeah,
man, because once again, there's that validation that
yep.
something survives, right? Consciousness survives physical death. I don't know how else to explain that, right? It's in the funeral home,
Well,
bro.
I
It's right there.
yeah, I've actually heard in the parks and stuff sometime, happened maybe twice where, like, someone will say, and this is before I did any of the dog stuff, I would hear someone say my name. I have my nickname is, well, I have my nickname is Guy, and then I would hear something like but I'd hear someone say Jim, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that's," and I turn around with a smile on my face. There's nobody there, bro. I'm thinking I'm gonna see so and so. There's nobody there. I'm like, there's literally no one even around me. And I'm like, who the hell was that? And so I, I've become less fascinated with the fact that we survive death. I just find it great when I find it when we dream about them.
Hmm.
When I'm in, because I dream a lot about people that passed. I almost every night I'm going to see someone I know that died, and there's something about that that is so cool, because you literally are in a space where, for about a moment, you don't really know you're in different spaces anymore. You're literally hanging out with that person,
Yep.
and some people would say, "Oh, it's just a dream." It's not, man. It is totally not. I'll see things and I'll feel things, and I'm like, it's as if I had a glass of wine with that person,
Yep.
and they could be dead 10 years. You know what I mean?
That's
So
amazing, man. Yeah, it is cool. It's always interesting. There's always something different happening. And remember, I'm in Australia, man. So like I don't know anybody here, and I'm hearing similar things, right? Having contact with spirits, UFOs, whatever. Like it's all over the world. It's the same thing. That commonality, that common interest, that death, it's global. It doesn't matter where you are. Everyone can relate to that. And most people want to know, right? We're curious if something happens in life at some point that makes us question that, and for me, I have the knowing, and I had to go further though. Like I'm like, I want to know what that is like on that others, like literally, man, what that is like. And I got a little glimpse of that, right? I'm not dead, no one is, but I got that glimpse of, okay, man, maybe it's like this, right? Maybe it might be like this once that happens. I'm literally surrounded by them every day, man. But I love it. I feel natural. Like I'm like, this is great. I don't mind it, man.
yeah,
It's really interesting. It's purposeful.
it is interesting, and it makes living just for this life kind of funny to me,
Exactly,
because
man.
it's almost, to me, this is like a waiting room, and everyone acts like this is the destination, but there's so much more, man. And yeah, I guess I fear of death, that's gone. I had that for a while now. That's been gone. And that's just because I felt even energy, like, if you're, in sleep, you can astral project sometimes,
Yep.
all that stuff. Once you feel all that, you start to realize that it's like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's nothing wild happening. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for me, it's made me appreciate, right? Appreciate the life, the existence we have. And for people that are just, level headed or just open minded or even went through trauma or whatever it is, they need that little bit of guidance, that little bit of hope that there is something more when they've lost everything, right? They lost that relative, that partner. Oh my God, that child. I've seen it all, bro. Everything.
yeah,
So to know that I am physically helping them with what they need to go to that next space, and then spiritually, literally helping them as well. I've seen so much in life, man, of this video game or whatever we're in, this stairway to heaven. I know there's something else. When I'm there, we'll,
yeah.
we'll figure it out. We might be doing this song and dance again, but yeah, man, it's pretty cool to just have that knowing, man. And yeah, man, we're just about to wrap up. I just